In 1988, a group of scientists sealed a heavy steel door in the middle of a desert, locked it, and walked away. 38 years later, that door is still locked, and the people who know what is sitting behind it refuse to open it. This map shows the isolated location of Vozrozhdeniya Island. For decades, it sat safely surrounded by the waters of the Aral Sea, creating a natural quarantine zone directly between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. But due to massive Soviet irrigation projects, the sea feeding the area completely dried up. By the early 2000s, the water was gone, leaving a flat, salt-crusted wasteland in its place. When the water vanished, it exposed the ruins of Kontubek, a fully operational Soviet town that housed 1,500 military personnel and scientists, complete with schools and a movie theater. None of it appeared on any public map. The town was erased from the records because it existed to support the massive biological testing range located just 3 kilometers up the road. This map plots the massive scale of Biopreparat. Operating under the guise of civilian research, this covert biological warfare program employed 40,000 people across hidden facilities. Right here on Vozrozhdeniya Island, they built Aralsk-7, the largest open-air biological weapons testing ground in human history. The scientific objective was highly specific. Researchers engineered natural pathogens like anthrax, smallpox, and bubonic plague to survive sunlight, resist extreme temperatures, and bypass existing Western vaccines. These modified strains were taken out of the lab and sprayed directly into the environment, where scientists measured their lethality on horses, sheep, and primates. Aralsk-7 operated as an industrial assembly line. The facility was explicitly built to mass-produce weaponized, unstoppable diseases by the ton. In the late 1980s, as the Berlin Wall began to crack and the Soviet Union fractured, leadership in Moscow panicked. An abrupt order came down to Aralsk-7. The entire local stockpile of weaponized pathogens had to be eliminated immediately to hide the evidence of the program. Destroying hundreds of tons of bioagents requires massive incineration facilities and months of careful processing. The scientists on the island had neither. Operating out of sheer desperation, they packed the pathogens into stainless steel canisters, soaked them in bleach, and buried them in 11 shallow, unmarked pits scattered across the island. With the waste buried in the dirt, the evacuating staff locked the heavy steel doors of the main laboratory, leaving the experimental equipment and the cold storage vaults sitting exactly as they were. By rushing the evacuation, the Soviets inadvertently constructed a biological time capsule, guaranteeing that the containment would slowly degrade in the desert heat. That degraded containment is now accessible by foot. When the Aral Sea evaporated, a physical land bridge connected the island to the mainland, destroying the only natural defense the site had left. Recognizing the threat, the United States Pentagon funded a $6 million operation in 2002 called Step Shield. Crews in full hazmat gear spent 3 months digging up the unmarked pits and dousing over 100 tons of contaminated soil with chemicals. This microscopic image shows an 18-hour culture of anthrax. When the cleanup teams dug up the buried canisters, they discovered that the modified anthrax spores inside were still viable. The bacteria had successfully survived 11 years of freezing winters and 100-degree summers. But the 2002 operation ended with a glaring omission. After neutralizing the dirt, the cleanup teams packed up and left without ever opening or inspecting the sealed main laboratory building. They spent millions cleaning up the garbage in the yard, but left the actual factory where the diseases were weaponized completely unexamined. Today, local scavengers regularly hike across the dry seabed to strip Kontubek for copper wiring and scrap metal. Satellite photos confirm they walk right up to the unmonitored walls of the main laboratory. Biosecurity experts note that certain freeze-dried strains of smallpox can persist for decades without active refrigeration. If the Soviet scientists left their most ruggedized, highly lethal experiments sealed in those cold storage vaults during the 1988 panic, those organisms could still be infectious today. If you stood in front of that rusted door right now, knowing there are test tubes inside filled with diseases engineered to have no cure, would you try to pry it open to document history, or would you run? For now, governments have reached a quiet, mutual agreement to let the facility rot. As long as those doors remain sealed, the pathogens inside stay localized to a building no one is willing to enter.